Hi, Nova.
Hey.
Hey guys.
Hello, everybody. Afternoon to those of you or morning to those of you in California. I guess it's afternoon if you're in Europe.
Hi.
Hey.
Hey, everybody. Um, so let's see. I guess I promised we talk about OpenSUSE and Python 3 and installers and Teuthology. Um, so I don't know a lot about the Python 3 one, but it came up in the leadership team meeting last week, and it's been on the mailing list. I think when maybe Brad noticed or mailed about Python 3 not working in Fedora 29. Yeah. And then Alfredo was mentioning that it was concerning that we don't have a Python 3 only environment in Sepia that I'll test with. Um, because one of the proposed solutions was just, hey, let's switch to Python 3 and ditch Python 2. But we don't have a lot of confidence in that, even though we've done a lot of work on it, because we don't run that way anywhere. Um, I believe the next OpenSUSE is Python 3 only, or at least mostly. I know Nathan's been working on that, so I was hoping we could get an update.
Right. So clearly, both OpenSUSE 15.0 and 15.1 can be run in a Python 3 only configuration. Python 2 is entirely optional, and we are testing. We are building Ceph in OpenSUSE with the Python 3 build, so it doesn't require Python 2 to install it. And but that said, there are other things that might be in the system that sometimes bring Python 2 in. We're not to the point where Python 2 no longer exists. It's like CentOS or Red Hat Enterprise Linux 8. Python 3 is the default, but Python 2 is optional. You can install it if you want it. Um, and being able to test Ceph builds for OpenSUSE in Sepia or Sepia is something of a holy grail for me. I mean, I would dearly love to be able to do that. So you know, if and I was very enthused when I read somewhat some time back that, with Lance Grimmer at the leadership meeting and talking about getting OpenSUSE into the list of upstream supported distros, that there aren't any non-technical obstacles to that anymore. So really, the only obstacle that I know of right now, given that David Galloway has already got a fog image, OpenSUSE 15 fog image working, the only obstacle is that Shaman doesn't build for OpenSUSE 15. And getting it to build will require, some non-trivial hacking on Shaman and its constituent parts, which I know almost nothing about. But I did chat about it with Alfredo, and he seemed convinced that the right way to implement it is using something called mock, which is wasn't immediately obvious to me what that meant, because the word mock, is the testing term, a mock in Python means to mock a function, but there's and I will go find the link right now to that project. But it allows theoretically an Ubuntu system to build for any number of OS targets. So you could build packages using mock. You could theoretically, on your Ubuntu system, build RPMs for different distros. I assume it uses chroot. That's what the Open Build service uses, chroot, to foreign builds. But
about mock, because it goes along with words like chroot. Yeah. So
yeah, and then but that said, when we do foreign builds in our downstream testing environments, I mean, there are some cases when we are forced to do that, where we have a Jenkins slave that runs RPM build, but for a different operating system than the Jenkins slave is actually running. We use Docker for that purpose. So,
have you thought about or looked at just calling out to your Elastic Build Service?
The Open Build Service?
Lab? Yeah, the Open Build Service, to pull them down into the CP Lab. I haven't. I know that I'm worried about build throughput, and I thought it might be easier than setting it all up, but maybe having it is super hard.
Right. So what? I mean, I have thought about that, right? So that would mean making Shaman aware of OBS, right? And then there's a small problem, and I think it's actually a fatal issue, that, as far as I know, and I haven't verified this recently, so maybe things have changed, but as far as I knew, OpenSUSE, there's two things, right? The Open Build Service is a free software project, just like Ceph, so anybody can install it, run it. Then there's something called the OpenSUSE Build Service, which is an instance of OBS running, on a build farm in the SUSE data center. So that's financed, operated by a private company, Linux. The OpenSUSE build service is what we're talking about, actually, when we talk about doing the builds in OBS. That means doing the builds in the SUSE data center. And the OpenSUSE build service has some general terms and conditions of use, and those say that you're not allowed to have a robot triggering the builds. So, but I have to verify that. I'm not totally certain that may have changed, although I doubt it. So
Right. Probably something we should respect then, yeah.
yeah, yeah, I don't know if there. I assume there are no exceptions to that. So,
Mhm.
but I will verify. Anyway, either of those, whether we do any of those ideas, if we do mock or if we do Docker or if we do OBS, I mean, it's all comes down to hacking on Shauna.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And so I assume that Alfredo would be the one reviewing doing the commits, the PR. So I'm inclined to use the approach that he suggests.
Yeah, no, we're just one of the things that was mentioned when Lons brought it up is, we have a certain amount of build throughput and it's kind of close to where it is to its max. So I think a distro will probably require new hardware, which may be easier now that there's a foundation with money. Or maybe we can get SUSE to pony up for a couple of servers to build their OS or something. But um,
I'm are the builds done on real hardware or are they done on in OVH?
I okay, I'm actually not sure of that. I thought it was real hardware, but they might be done because we have to host it. Oh, David probably
Okay.
knows. Sorry.
Yeah, it's a mixture. Well, I guess for the most part, some of them are done on VMs running in a Rev environment in the lab, and some are running in OpenStack VMs run by OVH. So I guess technically nothing is on directly on bare metal.
But
Yeah,
but I mean,
I totally hear what you're saying. That obviously Red Hat is financing all of the upstream builds, right now. So part of this new, what is it, the Ceph Foundation or what
yeah,
this entity,
yeah,
part of that is to even make it possible for someone other than Red Hat to
yeah,
finance something, right? You know,
yeah, yeah, yep. So
and
that'd
that's,
be
I
good.
don't think it's a matter of SUSE not wanting to finance,
Yeah. No,
but
the
just
other,
having a vehicle where it's even possible.
yeah. So hopefully that'll make it easier. But I mean, also part of that is Sage was going around a month or two ago saying like we need to look at our OVH usage because it's truly ginormous. Like I was shocked when I saw what the number
Yeah, I
actually
saw the figures too.
was. So we should not treat that as an infinite pool, tempting as it can be. Um, and also, yeah, okay. So hopefully one of those will come along. We also do, David, I think last week or something, put a Rel 8 image in the lab. Not that anyone's done a lot of work trying to test stuff on Rel 8 yet, but so hopefully the guys who are more worried about the Python will have options soon. So that's good. Um, okay. Anything more on that topic? Or I
Yeah,
will.
just to conclude that I mean, it's something that I would really, really love to have, and it's not trivial to achieve it.
All right. So moving on, I've been looking at the Teuthology um, installer interfaces that the Ceph task used, and I haven't gotten as far along into what the existing Ceph Ansible tasks actually do as I wanted, but I've gotten a good look in. So for those of you who aren't aware, we have a Ceph Ansible task in the upstream sequence, which can install Ceph with Ceph Ansible, and there's a small suite that uses it and a couple of subsuites that do. Um, Red Hat's internal QE group has a much more capable version that they use for downstream testing, but the task itself is publicly accessible. It's in I think it's an RH branch of the Teuthology repository, um, and they have some suites as well, although those aren't public, I don't think. Um, so I've been sort of looking at how the Ansible task differs from the Ceph task, and the delta is a lot smaller than I thought it was. one of the things I am a little fussed about is how we do the configuration so that most of like the actual YAML fragments, so that most of the tasks are, um, or most of the other fragments don't care about what environment they're in. Um, Mostly that's not a huge deal. I think we just like set up an installer fragment in the suite directories, that says Ceph Ansible or Ceph, and then um, make and then like hide them behind a you know Ceph installer abstraction task that swaps. What is a little interesting is that and that seems to work from how Ceph Ansible is being deployed in the suites I've looked at. Um, my main concern, and I think it won't be a big deal, but I haven't validated this really well yet, is that a lot of the tasks do specify specific Ceph config options. So we need to make sure that we need to provide the wrapping in the different installer tasks to pass that out to the nodes. And I assume all the installers support that really easily, but if one of them doesn't, then it's going to be a bummer. And the other thing I haven't done yet is gone and checked the standard in and standard out on the daemons, but the Red Hat Ceph Ansible task does set up daemon cluster objects, so I think that probably all works the way we need it to, which is exciting. Hooray! So it's not real fast progress, but that is continuing on. Hopefully have.
Greg, do you know by chance how they deal with, they meaning downstream, deal with upgrades using Ceph Ansible?
I have not looked at that yet in any detail. That's a good question, but I think Baby Shilp is here and can probably talk about that.
Actually, even
Oh,
I'm.
hi, Vasu.
Yeah, I joined it. I joined it too today because I saw your notes yesterday about the Ceph Ansible installation task. So, yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, on the input related to the installer, uh, uh, the common installer method is. I think we can just have one anonymous installer task, and we can everybody can just use that anonymous installer function as to call their own internal install functions, and we can just have one overrides, which I mean I think it's this is what my thinking is. If anyone disagrees, I mean, or has other method, maybe they can give the input. So we can just call it as a Ceph installer, and then the overrides can also be Ceph installer. And if SUSE wants to just call its own function, and it can use its overrides and call the installer function. And we can, someone in downstream, if we are interested in Ceph Ansible, we can call the Ceph installer method and override with Ceph Ansible overrides.
So, yeah, that's simply the plan. It's just we want to make sure that that the interface actually supports that and that it doesn't leak through what interface you're using. Because right now it very much does. So we need to set up sort of the API expectation endpoints. And there are a few other things that need to go in, like the Ceph Ansible task doesn't check the daemon logs or the Ceph cluster logs for health warnings and things. So
that was intentionally left out in downstream because
yeah. And I mean, that's fine, but like that's the sort of thing that we can pull that out into an abstraction class, and that's fine, but I want to make sure that we support all that before we try and push it through an upstream. Nathan?
Because I definitely see a lot of churn just to do the whitelisting and blacklisting, and I still haven't seen a meaningful fix where we say, yes, this warning is actually a bug, and let's go and fix this warning. But most of the time I have just seen we have like at least hundreds of this whitelist. I don't even know like why we scan and throw those warnings out.
Anyway, Nathan, you had a question, I think?
Well, it's not a question, it's more of a heretical proposal. I haven't been talking about this with anybody or until today, but I've been thinking about and I'm glad that you're now calling it an installer task now, because I've been at a loss as to what to call it. But this installer abstraction task, which will then call out to the different what you call installers, or what we call external orchestrators, DeepC, Ceph Ansible, the Ceph task, and now there's also Rook coming. This actually, the first word that occurred to me was dovetails, but now, I mean, it's more than just dovetailing, it's duplicating. This proposed installer is in my mind doing the exact same thing that the manager orchestrator module is doing. In other words, it's providing an API. The orchestrator module is providing an API that's agnostic about the underlying external orchestrator. So the idea is to be able to, and Sebastian will correct me if I'm wrong, if I say something stupid about this. My understanding is that in the future, when this orchestrator module becomes a thing, instead of running DeepC commands directly, or Ceph Ansible commands directly, or Rook commands directly, we'll be able to issue a Ceph MGR orchestrator command and not really care about what the underlying orchestrator, external orchestrator is, or what the underlying installer is. So the heretical notion that's in my mind is, could we somehow push both of these things forward together, this installer for Teuthology and the manager orchestrator module?
That's certainly something that
I see you're smiling and laughing.
I mean, it's a good question, and I've been thinking about it a little bit, and I think it was discussed a while ago, and maybe more in the future. But there's a couple of things that stop it. First of all, right now the manager still has a bootstrapping problem. It needs something to install it the first time around, and Teuthology also needs something to install it the first time around. In fact, most of the time, that's what Teuthology needs. And the other one is that Teuthology needs a lot of the specific daemon controls so it can invoke its failure scenarios that just relying on the manager makes not impossible but difficult.
I understand both of those, and my idea was for the first one, as I understand it, Sebastian again will correct me, it's possible for the orchestrator module to run when there is a cluster with consisting of one mon and one manager. So if we had a bootstrap task that deployed a single mon and a single manager, then we could then hand over to the orchestrator.
Yeah, and I mean,
and then
if that's done fast enough, then cool. But hopefully, this takes less time than, well, I don't know how long we think the orchestrator is going to take, but it's still pretty nascent. The other thing, of course, is that I don't know what your company imperatives are, but like we need to keep supporting Ceph Ansible in Red Hat, and so like for a while, and so these sorts of things aren't going to go away. And I would like to converge the Teuthology instance. Like I would like to reduce the number of Teuthology forks in the world. That's part of what I'm going on here. And so the more we can make them work for more environments like this, the better. So I definitely look forward to working with the manager, but it's not yet like a thing I think I can replace any of the work I'm doing with.
Right. Well, I mean, it sounds like you're already implementing this installer task, or at least, blocking it out. And so then integrating it with the manager orchestra module is something that could be done subsequently.
Yeah.
But I am keen. I am keen on seeing your code as soon as it's ready to be seen, so I can think about getting it to work with DeepC, because we also have the corporate imperative of testing our installer, right?
Yeah.
And I have a deep sea task which I'm preparing to submit upstream at some
Yeah.
near future.
Well, also, if I can look at that, it'd be good to see what interfaces it uses and like inputs it expects and stuff. So.
Yeah. I'll post you the code. I mean, the code is ready to be looked at, but I haven't gotten to the point where first of all, it doesn't run on CentOS or Ubuntu, so there's no. I mean, I could put it in the upstream repo, but it can't be tested in CPU. But I'll post the code.
So Nathan, just on the question about manager orchestrator, I haven't read anything in upstream where manager orchestrator is planning to take over the whole orchestration. So is it in the future Ceph release map or just for SUSE?
Well, I hope I didn't say that it was taking over everything.
No.
Sebastian can jump in here, and he's much more qualified to talk about it than I am.
Yeah, the orchestrator module is basically just a simple wrap about the external orchestrator. And the external orchestrator is something like Ceph Ansible or DeepSea or Rook. The orchestrator module, it's basically a unified command line interface for all existing external orchestrators. And I'm having internet connection problems. I'm sorry if I'm a bit laggy.
Just turn
It's
your
fine.
I hope
video
that
off.
answers your question.
Did we lose Sebastian?
So I was done. In case there are more questions.
So okay, so that seems like a very long-term plan, right? So it's not going to solve immediately if we want to have a common tautology branch or Ceph branch. So we still have to go with installer.
So Red Hat, as far as I know, Red Hat tries to or aims for at least the Ansible orchestrator for Nautilus. Well, I'm a SUSE guy. I'm not a Red Hat guy, but as far as I know, Red Hat aims for that.
Okay, maybe Greg might be knowing that. So at least I'm not aware.
Yeah, I don't remember what those timelines look like. They were discussed in our downstream planning meeting, but it's for Nautilus at least it's going to be pretty limited if we do have anything for there. It's
right.
an ongoing
I've
project.
been trying to speak for a while, but apparently I was on mute. So this is interesting. I think the question that is important to answer is what will the orchestrator be able to do for Nautilus? Because as far as I understand, the orchestrator will be somewhat limited in terms of deployment. Whatever the orchestrator modules provide, it will be likely able to use, but at least in Berlin, we spent most of the time together just defining the interface and the semantics. So I'm not entirely sure how much of the orchestrator will be ready by Nautilus to actually support plugging it into tautology and having tautology rely on it in a fashionable way for the downstreams to actually leverage the orchestrator reliably, all of that. Maybe Sebastian can enlighten us a bit what the actual plans for the near future are.
So I don't know what tautology actually needs from an orchestrator perspective. So The CLI spec that we defined in Berlin is basically just about deploying ones, removing ones, deploying managers, removing managers, deploying OSDs, removing OSDs.
And as far as I understood, it was mostly about the semantics of the operations. It will the actual implementation will be delegated to the external orchestrators anyway.
Yes. So the orchestrator module is basically just a specification and the API specification, and the actual work is done by for example Ceph Ansible.
Right. So if tautology needs or is able to rely on those operations, then tautology could technically be able to deploy those services using whatever then the backend provides. But I think right now that may be just a pipe dream, at least for Nautilus. After Nautilus,
Yeah. Well,
maybe.
and also for things like once we can like invoke Rook from within it, then this is easier. But for things like Ceph Ansible, we still would need to have tautology provide Ceph Ansible with the manifests or whatever they're called of nodes that it can use for doing those deployments. So there'll still be work to happen outside of
Right.
what the manager does.
Yeah, but I would assume that's the same for Salt and even for, well, not for Kubernetes, but Kubernetes actually handles that similar way. Basically, you will be installing or is the equivalent for Ceph Ansible, right? Then as soon as you have that, I mean, whatever is the orchestrator will be able to know what the cluster looks like to some extent, right?
Yeah, but I mean, like if we had a our still mythical Rook task or Rook handling task inside of tautology, that obviously knows what the cluster looks like. But if we are running without Rook and are just using Ceph Ansible or DeepC, then Ceph Ansible and DeepC need to know what nodes are available to them to use, and so tautology needs to tell them that by writing the appropriate YAML configuration files. And so there will always be stuff for tautology to do separate from what the manager is doing.
Yeah, because tautology locks the nodes, and actually it's tautology who is basically managing the available nodes for that one, right? That's the right. I was thinking about this as we have this data center, we just have things installed, and then we let someone else know what we. Yeah, never mind. I was. Yeah, I'm not sure if this helps Nathan or his idea, or what can we do to actually make that stuff happen?
I think we have to go with Greg's installer task for now because it's a matter of urgency, to get some test coverage for the external orchestrators instead of saying we're going to wait, for the orchestrator module to emerge. It seems realistic, more realistic to do it in 2 steps. And as Greg says, and as I say, that in tautology, it's never going to be just a matter of, the orchestrator module is never going to do everything that tautology needs. So there will always have to be some extra sauce in tautology. The tautology installer task could be then modified to use orchestrator commands when and if those commands serialize and are shown to be dependable and reliable. Various supported external orchestrators.
One more thing. We will need to test the orchestrator module in some time in the future. So we will prefer, or it would be nice if we could actually attach an external orchestrator, maybe within tautology, to the Ceph manager module. But I don't know how that could be done.
Wouldn't that be most likely like a which we actually have we would exercise our operations to the orchestrator interface? I mean, not necessarily force tautology to actually call those operations, but instead having a suite with a task that would issue orchestrator commands that then would result in some state change in the
Yes.
cluster.
Yes. For example,
I don't think that would actually require tautology integration, right?
Well, but it does mean that, for instance, tautology needs to support running with Ceph Ansible or DeepC or Rook, so that the manager, when it gets the orchestrator command, has an orchestrator to talk to. So in this world, it would be like the orchestrator would be determined by whatever you say in the Ceph installer task, whichever one you specify, and it's used to initially set up the cluster. And then the management orchestrator interface tasks would just invoke management or the orchestrator management commands, and they would call out to however the cluster was configured to begin with.
But we could turn the existing Ceph task into an external orchestrator that's capable of working with the orchestrator module.
Maybe, right? Yeah.
I mean, that's one option, and then the other option is the capability for tautology to install and configure some other external orchestrator. For DeepC, that's already finished downstream, but it's blocked by not having OpenSUSE upstream.
Okay. So I think those are the topics I had down, but we do have some time left. So did anyone have anything else to discuss?
Shilpa, sorry I cut you before, so maybe you had something. I don't know. Can't hear her.
Yeah, sounds like no.
Okay, so quick question. Do we have action items coming out of this meeting? Like,
I mean,
are we reaching any conclusions?
It was mostly just an update. I'm continuing to work. So hopefully we'll have, an installer orchestrator abstraction that we can use and that the manager can write tasks against before too long. That's it.
Okay. Is anyone on this call going to be working towards that? Anything we can
I am working on it. I mean, I'm often slow, but yes, I am working on this.
Okay. Is there anything we can do to help you out with whatever? I mean, we have a bunch of people in this meeting, surely.
If you'd like to do it for me, that would be great. But otherwise, I think just knowing what DeepC needs with those tasks that Nathan pointed me at is probably the most useful thing.
And I'm available, obviously, to talk about that DeepC task, salt task, and in DeepC in general, and what I don't know, I can find out. But just to address Joao's question, is anybody going, or is there anything we can do to help? Python 3, is being able to test on Python 3. If we could achieve that by including OpenSUSE Leap 15.1 or 15.0 in the upstream testing, that would be immediately then enable me to submit the DeepC task upstream and run it upstream. And then that's something definitely where help would be hugely appreciated.
Okay. Is there anything blocking that aside from, I don't know, available resources?
it's the shaman hacking that needs to happen. As far as I know, nobody's has attempted it or is even thinking about it other than me. And I'm only thinking about it.
And this is about this is to actually grab the packages from OBS then.
No.
No.
The thing is that Shaman pulls, that's the Ceph CI repo, looking for working branches that appear there, and then it builds them, right? And so adding, first of all, Shaman doesn't know how to build for OpenSUSE Leap 15, right? And second, it can't farm the task out to the OpenSUSE build service. The OpenSUSE build service doesn't allow that kind of use with a robot triggering a build.
I thought it was only for IBS.
Well, no, it would be only for OBS. OBS is a public resource, right? So we don't, SUSE doesn't want external things, totally taking over the resources, right? Used by robotically triggering millions of build jobs. That's why that's there.
Okay.
And theoretically, Ceph could be seen as something, a robot triggering millions of build jobs that occupy all. I mean, realistically, that's what could possibly happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it would be, I think, more feasible to have SUSE somehow finance some build hardware or build resources in OVH. For example, if the OVH bill was started to be paid by the, I don't know how that works, the shared financing or
we also have OVH things, so I'm not sure if we couldn't just host the VMs ourselves and have Shaman.
We had OVH until it got blown away last 2 weeks ago.
Well, yeah, but that is being sorted out. That is, yeah. Dennis told us about that. That apparently is being sorted out. But the thing is, if we make VMs available, would that help? Because I'm not entirely sure how would be like what Greg said, with maybe this would be feasible at some point with the Ceph Foundation.
David Galloway was saying that some of the build resources run on their OVH instance, so maybe we could just provide a persistent VM or several persistent VMs and put them on monthly billing, and then Shaman could use those. David, I don't know if David's on
with those resources. It's that someone needs to configure Shaman to actually build on OpenSUSE, and that's not done yet. And someone needs to work out how to do that.
That's not a resource problem. It's a developer time problem.
Yeah, and that is the first step, it sounds like. So,
do we have someone who has expertise with Shaman here in this meeting? No?
Not unless David does, but I don't think so.
I'm just wondering if it's expandable, then probably we can allocate some engineering resources to add support for OBS.
No, we can't do OBS because OBS has a policy saying that robots are not allowed to trigger builds in it. And Alfredo, the architect of Shaman, wants us to use mock. He wants to convert all of the builds over to mock and then add OpenSUSE in that way.
Okay, so as I understand, mock is a kind of utility which uses change root feature. So it's
I'm going to go find the link right now. Just a minute.
So yeah, it's probably will require to spin some resources in our village if the shaman has access to to the internet, it's quite possible because we have formal proof for using all our LVH instance for testing community stuff.
So whatever we want to do with Shaman is contingent on Shaman supporting mock. Is that it?
I thought it did already. I thought that's how it worked. I could be wrong.
I'm not familiar with
I
Shaman.
think
I'm just trying to figure out what is the graph of dependencies to actually achieve this. That's all.
See, github.com/ceph/shaman.
Yeah, my basic understanding of Shaman is it's basically just an API in front of a database. So theoretically, it doesn't really matter what was used to build.
I believe I just posted the link to.
So it's Red Hat related to it only, or
It's RPM software, man. Or it's Red Hat. Yeah,
but
with RL and
you know, Zipper also is RPM based.
yeah. No, that was what I meant. RPM based, and it works with Zipper. It's
Yeah, but Shaman doesn't need to know about Zipper. Truthology
Right.
needs to know about Zipper, and it already does.
right. It needs to build packages that with Zipper.
This
But it doesn't look like it supports OpenSUSE in its current form, though. At least it's not mentioned in the.
Anyway, someone needs to talk to Alfredo and dig into what the stack looks like. But T-Blocker is making it do anything, and knowing what the rules are.
Right, and one last point. I keep saying Shaman, but that's because I have this mental category where I put lots of stuff, but it's actually Jenkins Ceph build scripts that are doing the build itself. It's not Shaman doing the build. There's a thing called Ceph build.
Okay, so this
Shaman is
worst case
actually
scenario.
the
This
RPM based, right? Database or what?
that's what David said. I think it's basically a database. But in the worst case scenario, we would just need to create Jenkins jobs to build for OpenSUSE.
As part of the Ceph build scripts that already exist, that has to be, or somehow, or if we.
If it diverges enough,
we already have code right in Ceph build that I'm not familiar with the code, but one of the things it does is it pulls the Ceph CI repo, right, looking for branches, new branches, and if it sees a new branch, it builds it for all of the supported operating systems, and that's something I believe that's what Ceph build does. So it's a matter of patching Ceph build to build for OpenSUSE Leap, in addition to Ubuntu and CentOS, whatever else it builds for. And then Shaman will, it was probably my mistake for saying Shaman, because Shaman is just, as David said, Shaman is not what does the builds, it's the user interface that we interact with to get at the builds.
okay.
And there's another thing called P Builder, which I know nothing about. But
Well,
I think
guys,
that's what they're currently using.
I have to run away. Have another meeting in a few minutes. So yeah.
Builder is basically mock for Ubuntu.
So David, would we be talking about adding OpenSUSE support to mock then?
If it's capable of building for OpenSUSE, sure. One of the questions I had was, do you need, or I guess want, packages for every Ceph CI branch for OpenSUSE, or do you only want to test specific branches?
So need and want are two different things.
Sure.
Obviously, even if we had it building, if we had OpenSUSE RPMs or repos for just stable branches, or just tagged, just for certain tags, that at least would allow some kind of testing in upstream. But obviously, it would be, you ask me what I want, then I would want the whole deal, right?
Yeah.
The same level of support that we have for CentOS and Ubuntu for OpenSUSE. But I'm willing to take whatever I can get.
Yeah, in sort of an idealized infinite resource world, then sure, we'd love to test every distribution and just like run them through, right? And
well, but here,
it's a little higher.
OpenSUSE is not just every distribution, right? This is something that now it is providing something that Ceph wants, right? It's providing a Python 3 environment.
And we have developers who actually like are involved with that distribution, who are on the Ceph project, so it pops a lot higher up on the distribution priority list and things. So, it would be nice if we could just build it all the time in the same way and just randomly select between it and Ubuntu
and if there's no financial problem, because we have budget for any kind of OVH machines, we can provide those and we pay for them.
That would probably be a lot easier than trying to do it for specific builds too. So
yeah. The more we talk about it, the more I want to just stop everything that I'm doing and work on mock.
Oh, well, in that case, let's keep discussing it. But we are down to our last 10 minutes, and I wouldn't mind giving everyone a few more. I don't know about you guys. I have another meeting in 9, so.
I have a couple questions.
Oh, thank you.
I'm sorry. One thing I wanted to add is this is about using the Ceph installer, orchestration, and all of that changes that we're trying to make in Tutology. If we don't already have a tracker, it would be really good to have one. So, everyone can add in there, and we can make sure that we're all thinking on the same page. So just my 2 cents.
You mean like a project tracker or just a ticket?
A feature?
Yeah, I'll go make that happen.
Thank you. Syed, do you want to go?
I think it was Kier's turn.
Yeah. So I have a couple of questions. One of them is our current upstream Tutology is using libcloud 1.5, which is pretty outdated, and it's probably can be used with our cloud because it has new API and API version v3 for OpenStack. And I'm going to spend some time for making a patch which will use newer version of libcloud. But since I have no access to the lab and I don't know how to test this in order to land it upstream, so we need to I need to figure out how to test it before we can merge it, and if it's ever works. And the second of testing is if the current system can be switched easily in CPR. So who should I contact? And
I can champion that for you. I won't be able to do everything. I think usually what happens for changes like that is just like a branch gets pushed, and then some of the Toothology worker processes slowly get switched to it. And if they don't break, then good. And otherwise, we roll it back and revert the patch, which is definitely not the most comfortable or best way to handle it, but it's what we have right now, unfortunately.
yes, the problem is that I hope you're realizing there the three kind of issues. First issue is that I'm possible to run and deploy the upstream Toothology, for example, in order to schedule something. If it's passed, I will merge it. I will create a PR. The next problem is if it's ever possible to run the tasks on the system that I do not support, like Red Hat or something. I mean, all of that. And another thing is how the upgrade will happen. So it's three kind of testing. So if first of I can provide, the second I need some help, and probably for the third one should be someone who is managing CPS infrastructure. I don't know.
You mean like the upgrade across Toothology versions, or are you worried about something specific?
I mean that we need to do this quickly. So when we merge, so I'll be online to see what is problem there in order to fix or just analyze how to improve the patch. Or the ideal solution is to try and switch it quickly from one branch to another without reverting stuff, if it's possible.
I think we just have to pick a time and like click the button and then go restart some processes and watch those processes to see if they succeed or fail. Because I mean, it's just like we've got our pool of however many tooth worker processes, and those run with what they've got, and so we can kick them and give them the new code and then make sure that they don't break on it. But I agree, it's terrible, but I think that's about all we've got. I mean, Nathan's made some changes that have gone through this process, right? A couple times.
Yeah, I actually saw that it happens with some of patches, and someone produces quickly patch like the couple of my previous patches. But
I mean,
I would like to avoid this situation when someone needs to quickly patch things.
We've been talking about this at our meetings, over the past few months, right? The whole idea of having the ability to deploy Toothology in a testing environment.
Yeah,
and run integration tests on it. That's what you're talking about, right? It's a
no.
It's not there yet, though.
As I said, the first is that I can, for example, make an integration test on my site, but I do not cover the infrastructure, nuances, or configuration. I do not replicate it. So it's different kind of testing. So
I don't know, Curry, it can help, but I think I told that before. So typically, Toothology related fixes, since we don't have a separate branching environments, what we can do, if you commit a change and you tested it on your level and you believe that it's looking good, we can actually schedule, small subset of suites in Sepia on that tautology branch and run it through and watch it for a day or two. And we can actually manually schedule some suites on that branch, and then once we build confidence level, we can merge it into master.
Okay, do we need to have this branch in SUSE tautology or in my private fork?
It's a good question. I never tried calling a tautology branch from a private fork. I think theoretically it should work, but on another hand, you can publish it in.
It depends which modules you're changing. If they're the ones that can get downloaded and invoked by the tautology worker process, then you can specify a repository. But if it's the tautology worker itself, that needs to be an upstream and just like rolled over.
So the problem with the upstream, I don't know how the CPL lab infrastructure is organized, but the problem is when I update the requirements file on setup pipe, I will increase the number of libcloud stuff. And I don't know if the Ceph will update the virtual environment or install new versions of libraries.
Yeah, I think that's the tooth worker process, and that'll do it. But I'm not sure. I also have to drop, guys. Thanks a bunch.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll do next time. Bye.
Thanks, Greg. Bye.
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 Bye.